Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. I'm SocietySucks and today I'm checking out the European Union Explained by CGP Grey. Now I live in Poland, which is part of the EU, so I already know quite a lot. However, certain countries in the European Union have overseas territories and I'm not exactly sure how that works. Are those overseas territories also part of the Union or no? So I'm hoping that this video covers that. Also, this video is 11 years old, so this was made before Brexit. The British were still part of the EU when this video was made, so obviously that's going to be the most notable difference.
Where is the European Union? Obviously here somewhere,
in Europe.
But much like the European continent itself, which has an unclear boundary, the European Union also has some fuzzy edges to it. To start, the official members of the European Union are, in decreasing order of population, Germany, France, the United Kingdom, Italy, Spain, Poland, Romania, the Kingdom of the Netherlands, Greece, Belgium, Portugal, the Czech Republic, Hungary, Sweden, Austria, Bulgaria, Denmark, Slovakia, Finland, Ireland, Croatia, Lithuania, Latvia, Slovenia, Estonia, Cyprus, Luxembourg, and Malta. The edges of the EU will probably continue to expand further out as there are other countries in various stages of trying to.
Well, nothing has changed since 2013. No other country has joined, but the British have left.
Become a member. How the EU works is hideously complicated and a story for another time.
Oh, it
but
is.
For this video, you need know only three things. First, countries pay membership dues, and second, vote on the laws they all must follow, and third, citizens of member countries are automatically European Union citizens as well. This last means that if you're a citizen of any of these countries, you are free to live and work and retire in any of the others, which is nice, especially if you think your country is too big or too small or too hot or too cold. The European Union gives you options. By the way, did you notice how all three of these statements have asterisks attached to this unhelpful footnote? Well,
oh yeah, they do.
Europe loves asterisks that add exceptions to complicated agreements. These three, for example, point us towards the first bit of border fuzziness with Norway, Iceland, and Little Liechtenstein, none of which are in the European Union, but if you're an EU citizen, you can live in these countries, and Norwegians, Icelanders, or Liechtensteiners can live in yours. Why? In exchange for freedom of movement of people, they have to pay membership fees to the European Union, even though they aren't a part of it, and thus don't.
Okay, that part I wasn't aware of. I mean, I knew that Norway was like that, but I didn't know about Liechtenstein and Iceland.
Get a say in its laws that they still have to follow. This arrangement is the European Economic Area, and it sounds like a terrible deal were it not for that asterisk which grants EEA, but not EU members, a pass on some areas of law, notably farming and fishing, something a country like, say, Iceland might care quite a lot about running themselves. Between the European Union and the European Economic Area, the continent looks mostly covered with the notable exception of Switzerland, who remains neutral and fiercely independent, except for her participation in the Schengen area.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there is one part.
Clean and or well patrolled, the Schengen area is a bit mind-blowing because it's an agreement between countries to take a meh approach to borders. In the Schengen area, international boundaries look like this. No border officers or passport checks of any kind. You can walk from Lisbon to Tallinn without identification or the need to answer the question business or pleasure. For Switzerland, being part of Schengen but not part of the European Union means that non-Swiss can check in any time they like, but they can never stay. This kumbaya approach to borders isn't appreciated by everyone in the EU, most loudly the United Kingdom and Ireland, who argue that islands are different. Thus, to get onto these fair isles, you'll need a passport and a good reason. Britannia's reluctance to get fully involved to these fair isles.
Okay, I just had to check to make sure, but yeah, Romania, Croatia, and Bulgaria are part of the Schengen area now. So obviously, I mean, this video is 11 years old. Obviously, some things are out of date, like the fact the UK is still part of the EU in this video. But yeah, three more countries, at least from the list, which were not part of the Schengen area, now are Romania, Bulgaria, and Croatia. And Cyprus, I believe, is also a candidate for the Schengen area, though I'm not 100% sure on that one.
Need a passport and a good reason. Britannia's reluctance to get fully involved with the EU brings us to the next topic, money. The European Union has its own fancy currency, the euro, used by the majority but not all of the European Union members. This economic union is called the Eurozone, and to join, a country must first reach certain financial goals. And lying about reaching those goals is certainly not something anyone would do. Most of the non-Eurozone members, when they meet the goals, will ditch their local currency in favor of the euro, but three of them, Denmark, Sweden, and of course the United Kingdom, have asterisks attached to the euro section of the treaty, giving them a permanent opt-out. And weirdly, four tiny European countries, Andorra, San Marino, Monaco, and Vatican City, have an asterisk giving them the exact reverse, the right to print and use euros as their money despite not being in the European Union at all. So that's the big picture. There's the EU, which makes all the rules, the Eurozone inside of it.
I wasn't aware that San Marino, Monaco, Andorra, and Vatican City use the euro. So that's something new to me.
At all. So that's the big picture.
Though I suppose it does make sense.
Which makes all the rules, the Eurozone inside of it with a common currency, the European...
Because having those 4 countries have their own currencies would be kind of pointless, given how small they are and how a majority of people there are probably tourists coming from the rest of Europe. So they're gonna have the euro. So it makes sense.
Economic area outside of it where people can move freely, and the selective Schengen for countries
and then there's
that
just
borders
Switzerland.
Just aren't worth the hassle. As you can see, there's some strange overlap with these borders, but we're not done talking about complications by a long shot, once again, because empire. So Portugal and Spain have islands from their colonial days that they've never parted with. These are the Madeira and Canary Islands off the coast of Africa and the Azores well into the Atlantic.
This is what I was most curious about.
Spanish and Portuguese, they're part of the European Union as well. Adding a few islands to the EU's borders isn't a big deal until you consider France, the queen of not letting go. She still holds on to a bunch of islands in the Caribbean, Reunion off the coast of Madagascar, and French Guiana in South America. As far as France is concerned, these are France too, which single-handedly extends the edge-to-edge distance of the European Union across a third of the Earth's circumference.
Okay, so they are part of it.
These bits of France, Spain, and Portugal are called the outermost regions, and they're the result of the simple answer to empire: just keep it. On the other hand, there's the United Kingdom, the master of maintaining complicated relationships with her quasi-former lands, and she's by no means alone in this on such an empire-happy continent. The Netherlands and Denmark and France, again, all...
Oh, well, I mean, I suppose the British don't really matter anymore because they're not part of the EU, so all the islands just... If they were part of it before, they're definitely not now.
All have what the European Union calls overseas territories. They're not part of the European Union, instead they're a bottomless well of asterisks due to their complicated relationships with both the European Union and their associated countries, which makes it hard to say anything meaningful about them as a group, but in general, European Union law doesn't apply to these places, though in general, the people who live there are European Union citizens because in general, they have the citizenship of their associated country, so in general, they can live anywhere in the EU they want, but in general, other European Union citizens can't freely move to these territories, which makes these places a weird semi-permeable membrane of the European.
So they can move to other EU countries, but people from other EU countries can't move over there. A confusing mess, but I highly doubt many people want to move there anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
European Union proper, and the final part we're going to talk about in detail, even though there are still many more one-off asterisks you might stumble upon, such as the Isle of Man, or those Spanish cities in North Africa, or Gibraltar, who pretends to be part of southwest England sometimes, or that region in Greece where it's totally legal to ban women, or Saba and friends who are part of England sometimes, or that region in Greece where it's totally legal to ban women, or...
There's a region in Greece where you can just ban women? What? Okay. Weird. But yeah, sure.
Saba and friends who are part of the Netherlands and so should be part of the EU but aren't, or the Faroe Islands upon which while citizens of Denmark live, they lose their EU citizenship, and on and on.
Oh, I didn't know that.
These asterisks almost never end, but this video must.
So yeah, obviously the EU is a bit complicated, especially when it comes to overseas territories. I'm glad that was actually mentioned here because that was what I was most curious about. I also did learn some other stuff that I wasn't aware of. And obviously we can see the differences, like for example, there are more countries in the Schengen area now. Pretty much every single country that's part of the EU now was part of the EU when this video was made. Well, obviously with the exception of the United Kingdom, which is no longer part of the EU. Yeah, I'm not really sure what else to say. The EU is very complicated and it's probably going to stay like that. I doubt that's going to change. And yeah, we'll just have to wait and see if there's going to be any new members to the EU. Obviously, there's countries who are trying to be, but they haven't been able to get there yet. But we'll see what the future brings. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider subscribing and leaving a like. If you want to see more reactions, check out this video right here. And with that, I'll see you in the next video.